So here's what I want to do. I want to ask you, I want to specifically with respect to Benghazi. In October of 2011, there was a specific request for a machine gun to defend our facility in Benghazi. And in August of 2012, just a month before the attack on our facility, a document again lists a machine gun as equipment needed and requested. Do you know who denied the request for those machine guns and why?
No, sir, I do not.
Who should I ask to find out?
You can ask me, sir, and I'll go back and research that.
Would you do that for me?
Yes, I will.
Have you watched the video surveillance from the night of the attack?
I have.
Without going into great detail, would you agree with me, or do you at least see why somebody on the ground might have asked for that piece of equipment, given what you and I have seen in the surveillance video? I mean, thinking back to the video, can you see how that might possibly have come in handy that night?
In my review of what happened and looking at that, I think the agents made the right decisions at that point not to engage. I think that they were equipped with fully automatic weapons, not quite the rate of firepower of a machine gun. I agree that machine guns can be very menacing and have a tremendous effect.
Well, they wanted them for the rooftop. They wanted them for the rooftop. Yeah. I want you to go back, if you would, and watch the video and see whether or not you conclude the same way that I concluded or not. And I appreciate if you could go back and with specificity, I want to know who reviewed that request, who denied that request, and is there an appeals process within the State Department in light of these two previous ARB recommendations that the Secretary of State should take a personal and active review, that the Secretary of State should personally review the security situation? Is there an appeals process where someone hypothetically could say, you know what, you're giving me a no, but I'm going to take this up the food chain? Does that exist?
Yes.
All the way up to the highest levels of the State Department?
I will tell you that the one thing that the Department has that very few other agencies has is something called the dissent channel. And it is a channel that we highly prize, and that if you disagree with policy or you disagree with a decision, that officers in the Department of State at all ranks and all locations have the ability to send something directly in at the highest levels through a dissent channel cable and say, I disagree with something, and it goes to the highest level.
But it doesn't take much to imagine him traveling from Tripoli to Benghazi with an increased security presence, does it? If there are more security folks in Tripoli and he is traveling to Benghazi, it is not that much of a stretch to surmise that some of them may have actually traveled with him.
When he traveled to Benghazi in that trip, sir, he took additional RSOs with him. There were additional RSOs that could have gone as well, but they made
for a grand total of how many?
5 at post.
All right, and how many were there before the footprint was reduced?
3.
No. How many were there before their deployment ended?
I don't think there was ever more than 5 at that post, sir.
In Tripoli?
I'd have to go in Tripoli. I'm sorry, in Benghazi. I'm sorry.
Right. I'm talking about that the ambassador would have had access to, because you and I agree the number that he had access to was reduced despite the fact that he asked for more.
The military team, the SST team, had deported. Additional DS agents were put into post.
All right. Well, what I want you to find out for me is this, because this is a presidentially appointed ambassador who made a pretty plaintive pleading. In fact, I'll quote it to you. Our efforts to normalize security operations have been hindered by a lack of host nation security support, an increase in violence on foreign targets, and neither compound meets OSPP standards. Do you know who said that?
From your context, I would think it would be the ambassador.
It was the ambassador himself in what I would describe as a pretty plaintive pleading for some help, and this is the response he got. No, I do not want them to ask for the team to stay. Do you know who said that to the ambassador, the presidentially appointed, Senate-confirmed ambassador?
I believe he was referring to the SST, and that might have been Ambassador Kennedy.
It could have been, but it was actually Charlene Lamb.
Ah.
And Charlene Lamb has not been, and is not likely to ever be the Secretary of State for this country. So when I see her responding to a presidentially appointed, Senate-confirmed ambassador who is making a pretty plaintive pleading for some extra help, and she says, do not make that request, I want to know whether the ambassador had the ability to go above her head and go straight to the top. And if not, why not?
The ambassador certainly did have the ability to go over her head. Sir, I do think that the one salient point that must be discussed is that there was quite a bit of discussion about relieving the SST, the military team that was there and only provided static security at the compound, with additional diplomatic security agents who could provide static security and mobile security. I think that was why the decision was made to release the SST. We were replacing it with personnel that actually had more capabilities.
Well, Secretary Starr, my time is up, but sometimes when everyone is to blame, no one is to blame. And part of the frustration that Mr. Roscom, I believe, so eloquently remarked on today was the designation of the facility itself, and then you have our heretofore failure to understand what policy would have been so important. You testify that we have how many unpersoned posts right now? 5? Did I hear you correctly? 5? You were going through a series of numbers, and you said, well, 5 of those you can discard because there's no one there.
Correct.
So we do close facilities.
Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming that someone did the weighing and balancing in those 5 and decided, you know what, through the miracles of technology or whatever, we don't have to have a physical presence there. So you can understand why we would like to know what weighing and balancing went on with respect to Libya. And I want to know who saw these requests for extra equipment and personnel, who denied them, and whether or not you believe, and Inspector General, you can help here too, whether or not you believe that there is a culture in the State Department where there would be any consequences for following the dissent channel. Because some companies do say, sure, I have an open door policy, but sometimes when you walk through that open door, your career takes a hit.